The planned nuclear blasts of Bikini Atoll and surrounding Marshall Islands is a topic I wish to discuss with you today. The bombings and devastation that occurred during the 1950s disturbed and destroyed a quiet island nation, rocking their way of life to win the nuclear race. The television broadcast of the events was unprecedented at the time. Let this fact sink in. Over half of the world's filmmaking materials were brought over to the Marshall Islands to capture these moments of nuclear capability. But what were these cameras and reporters actually capturing? Achievement or destruction? It was interesting to say the least to discover technology's role in the Bikini Atoll blasts, an event I had never even heard of before, and to realize the impacts these news broadcasts, videos, and technology had on the world. Was the goal to tout scientific and technological achievement while ignoring the cultural devastation and impacts these events had on the Bikinese people? Evidence seems to be pointing us in the direction of yes. Let's not forget also how this topic made me feel on a personal level. Empathetically, having my world as I knew it go up in smoke, literally, would be life altering. Something I'll get into as we dig deeper into the controlled blasts. So buckle in as we revisit this moment in history and discover the technological advancements, persuasions, and failures, and the impacts these events had on the people who lived to tell the tale. The reason the nuclear blasts at Bikini Atoll hit me so hard was because it seemed quite evident all these years later that the US government had no regard for the lives of the Bikinese people or the future impacts these blasts would have. Let's talk about technology. I love television as much as the next person, if not more. But what if the messages we are receiving through this type of technology are false or purposely misleading? What stood out about the events in the Marshall Islands and the world as a whole was the fact that news broadcasters were either willingly or unwillingly spinning a false narrative regarding whether or not the US government knew the direction of the winds on the day of the hydrogen blast on March 1st, 1954. Clinton-era documents revealed they did, but news broadcasts at the time rejected that idea completely, getting a message to every household that would watch that the US should have no blame directed their way. I guess I can't help but mention, too, that the technological advancements of the nuclear bombs being tested were also miraculous, but I guess scary in the same breath. During these blasts, the US brought over more than half of the world's filmmaking materials to the Marshall Islands to capture these moments, a fact I mentioned earlier, and a feat you can't help but find impressive and historical. But then again, was the goal to show a reality, good and bad, or was it to later be edited and then delivered throughout the households to spin a false narrative while escaping the blame? I want to now dive into the societal impacts these events had a bit more in depth. Societally, this planned destruction of Bikini Atoll could not have been more contrasted. In the US, there was celebration. In the Marshall Islands, death and destruction. And a loss of hope regarding their futures, and their futures on the island, and the futures of their children. The residents of the Marshall Islands affected by these blasts shared a meaning-making perspective. They all experienced the same terror, devastation, and loss of everything they knew and loved. Let's pose it this way. The inhabitants of the Marshall Islands valued nature, connectivity within their community, and the animals surrounding them. This could not be further from the values of the US at the time. That is clear by the way the government bombed this peaceful island community without any regard for the things those Bikinis value most. Was technology misused during these events? Was the US government using technology to spread a false narrative to households everywhere? And lastly, was this scientific achievement worth the impacts of the devastation? Let me examine my own life and beliefs to help answer those questions I posed. I value my health, family, and my home above everything and anything. It is everything I hold near and dear, and to have that destroyed to create a bomb, I couldn't make peace with that. The residents of Bikini Atoll and the surrounding islands that were affected from the blast experienced a 95% rate of thyroid cancer. As a student nurse, I can't help but panic at that thought affecting my own community. I know how devastating those diagnoses are and the impact it will have on these people for the rest of their lives. Now let's talk technology. Is it truthful? Is what we're seeing and hearing news-wise actually happening as it's told on our televisions through radios? After hearing about this story, I will now take what I see with a bit more of a grain of salt and do my own research. Lastly, I conclude that the devastation was not worth the scientific achievements of these bombs. Human lives should never be sacrificed for science, not in any circumstance. In closing, technology can be incredible. It can be scary. It can be anything you want it to be, but we must use it wisely.